welcome back to Fantasy Fiction First Friday. And if you are new here, my name is Genevieve Gravel, and every Friday we go through one of my original stories and try to figure out how to make it better. Okay, so I know we're due for, I believe it's chapter 13 in The House on G Street, but today I want to take it back to my first novella, The Nature of Forces, because I am currently working on a book. It's Dystopian Tales of the Fae, yet to be named. And while it is a standalone book, it does take place in the same universe and the same time frame as The Nature of Forces. So I'm at the point now where I'm reading about a big storm that, or I'm writing about a big storm that really kind of changes the landscape. And it's kind of an important, very pivotal point in the story. So I want to go through and read that from The Nature of Forces today, just to kind of make sure that all of my timeline is on point and all of my descriptors and how the storm happens properly. If you do want to catch up on The Nature of Forces and the notes we've made and the progress we've made so far there, that is under my fantasy fiction playlist. You are more than welcome to check it out. I do not recommend, however, buying these books, The Nature of Forces or The House on G Street, because they are not finished yet. My niche on the internet is learning and growing and becoming a good writer. So we kind of go through these books and try to figure out how to make them better. But they are on Amazon. I've thought about taking them down, but then I kind of want to leave them up, just in case somebody wants to follow along. They're there, but don't, just, flipping through this. I forgot how much I really love this story. I've been so focused on, annotating and making notes on The House on G Street, and I just recently put out a new short story. It's a spicy romance that I'm actually very proud of. And I will never read it on here, on the internet, because it's not safe for work. But I do think it's my best work to date. It is a palate cleanser. So I've been working on that, and I've been working on the story I was just telling you about. But flipping through this, I'm remembering how much I really, really love this story and the characters within. And I'm excited to get to work on the rewrite. But anyway, people danced face to face and hand in hand. The music flowed through all the land. The people of Alexandria were celebrating the celebration of the moon, the marking of a new calendar year, as ever recorded here in history. They had all come together in joy and giving, to give thanks to Mother Nature for her bountiful harvest. For the bountiful harvest they were about to receive. This year, though, was greater and grander than any other, as it was the centennial celebration. And by the following day, they would begin the year of the moon, 500. In the center of the town's circle, stone walls encircled the stage of the bonfire. At the very same place, I had heard Derek's voice announce his engagement. Though I had witnessed it from afar, the growth and the change, I was still astounded by the grandeur of Alexandria. The circle of stone now stood 3 stories high, with balconies under archways, each window lined in gold and ornately decorated with pillars of carved stone and statues depicting women holding flowers and fairies playing with little butterflies. People arrived by the hundreds on foot, bicycles, and white stallion to the massive amphitheater, every one of them dressed in a perfect adornment. I can read, I swear I can. With large hats and feathers of every color that adorned their hair, the women all wore full skirts with many layers and plunging necklines. Hands wore gloves, feet wore slippers of gold, leather boots lined with fur. Men and women alike wore fur-length cloaks of dyed velvet to ward off the night's chill. She crossed the grassy knoll filled with tables, tents, and kiosks where people handed out flowers and tiny cakes. One tent was filled with players telling a funny tale to adoring audiences who laughed and applauded. She paused there to watch the play. The baby blue feather in her long, powdered pink curls, the same shade as her gown, whispered lightly into her powdered face. Her full lips glistened pink, and her blue eyes widened with delight. Her hand-painted skirts of blues and with pink birds on the silk, her bouncy breasts flowed over the feather-lined neckline. As she took her leave, she glided up the stairs, the stone archway, entering to the town circle. I overheard someone call her Melody. Of a sweet 16 years of age, she asked the gentleman who addressed her if he had seen her closest friend. She searched among the sea of smiling, painted faces. See, that doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible sentence. She searched among the sea of smiling, painted faces for her closest friend. That's much better. Some walls inside were painted in soft blues, greens, and light pinks, and other walls papered with contrasting embossment that depicted scenes of flowers and birds. The long banquet tables covered the complementing hues, each filled with bowls of silver and plates of gold, and rows of candelabros, bouquets of flowers, and fruits and foods of every kind. Fresh vegetables created floral expressions, and platters of tiny cakes, each hand-painted and adored with candied pearls. Overstuffed sofas and chairs made of carved wood, covered in silks and brocades, filled with lovers and lovers of life. Mistresses sat on their lovers' laps and whispered sweet nothings into their ears while plunging their cleavages into the smiling faces. People were everywhere. The men wore long hair, powdered and pulled back in large satin bows, and some wore hats topped with feathers of fur, and some wore tall boots of leather, some wore loafers, all wore coats with tails, as was the custom in society. Children handed out bouquets of flowers, and men offered single roses. Some women held masks to their painted faces to represent the feminine. They dressed as cats and owls, representing strength and wisdom, each designed to attract a mate. Others held fans of feathers, ribbons, and bows, used coyly to hide their smiles, adding mystique and mystery to the potential lovers. Jewels dangled from ears, wrists, and necks. Lights of white twinkles on the wall and overhead, candelabras of gilded gold further illuminated each wall circling the grand circle, and in the center, of which a bonfire burned brightly, the open arena was several stories. Well, we already established it's 3 stories high. Each floor with catacombs of rooms filled with wine and food and entertainment. Melody did find her best friend amongst all of them, Raiden. She was on the dance floor with a champagne flute in one hand. The music rang out from the stage directly in front of her. The music ran out from the stage directly in front of the young women who danced. Her hair was upswept with a few stray tendrils flowing down, and she wore a peach gown of 12 layers, cottons, twills, and velvets, lined with white rabbit fur. The hem swept the floor, and the fur tickled her heart-shaped chin. Her wide brown eyes twinkled with the innocence of youth. The girls laughed and hugged in greetings, and people danced around them, face to face and cheek to cheek, as the sounds of music whisked them away to an existence of all their own. Life was never dull for the people of the metropolis. There was always hard work to do, gossip to be told, and parties to be thrown, and this was the grandest party of all time. Everyone was in attendance, each perfectly packaged and tied with a bow. Youthful exuberance shone from the most elderly, and people toasted and cheered, congratulating themselves on being the most blessed of all life's creatures. They spoke highly of the gracious bounties that they had produced. A siren took center stage, flirting with her audience. The starlet sung her seducing song to the crowd. Mothers held infants in their loving embraces as doting fathers played silly to see their young smile, and the girls danced perched on top of their father's feet as they floated to the lively beat. plates of tarts topped with bright berries under snowfalls of powdered sugar filled the little mouths as macaroons in every color were passed around. The evening sky blazed pink with bright streaks of gold. The winds were calm, and the air a slight chill, filled with the promise of a healthy harvest to come and many babies to be born. The people of Alexandria were electric with anticipation and excitement. Everyone with anything to offer had set up earlier in the week. With the rise of the crescent moon, on this night the full moon promised to be the most bountiful. People embraced and laughed with hope and anticipation and drunken love from the center of the open circle, and the moon slowly came into view. When it hit dead center, the people kissed and cheered. Celeste did not attend the grand ceremonies. She took her coven to the great stones of three. Now she was amongst the few who knew of their existence. Celeste had sealed them off and kept them to herself within the walls of her fortress. The entire coven was in attendance at the great stones of three, with flowers in their hair. They danced beneath the great stones, and the ceremony began. They feasted on the heart of an owl. They took to the circle hand in hand. Though the girls were absent of fear, my heart filled with trepidation. I had no way of knowing what was to come, but I knew my sister, and I knew for her to miss such a grand celebration, something beyond selfish was about to happen. I closed my eyes, wishing for the vision to go away, but it would not. I thought of the young ladies I had seen at the party, the ones I didn't know. But why had they appeared before me? I looked up. I looked upon Alexandria for a purpose. I had wanted to see the centennial celebration, but now I wanted nothing more than to look away. I could not mask my visions, no matter how hard I tried. My girls were not from me and Bree. We sat by a fire of our own, with vases filled with ointments and herbs to offer to Mother Nature on this most blessed night. But I took no notice of them. I sat on the ground with my feet crossed and my eyes closed, watching my visions. Amber approached Celeste's naked body, standing in the middle of the circle of her coven. She took the ointment of the wasp and rubbed it on Celeste's skin. By the light of the moon's rising, all the girls of the coven began to caress Celeste's body. And those caresses quickly turned to whippings. Blood flowed from the deepest lashes on her backs and legs and thighs, and the winds began to howl. Celeste invited through invocation the spirit of the moon, stirring water and blood into the holes. The girls frantically dug, then dipping a linen cloth into the mud, and the rains began to fall. They proceeded to wipe the potion onto each of the three of the great stones, chanting, "Goddess of the moon, I call on thee." And when their chants grew louder and quicker, the girls began to dance around Celeste in a trance, and the ground began to quake. Celeste's spirit left her body and rose high above the coven. Her phantom form sprang forth as bright white light on the dark backdrop of the night. She absorbed the moon's rays and grew bigger and stronger, and the moon began to dull as the silhouette of her slender body began to outshine the moon itself. And the moon turned black with a thunderous boom high above the treetops. A herd of phantom bulls was birthed from Celeste's spirit, shooting lightning bolts upon terrified people running to get out of harm's way. Attacks of lightning struck homes and set crops ablaze, killing men, women, and animals without reservation. Melody was stunned, in shock of the sudden change. When she was suddenly struck from the side, it knocked her to the ground and brought her back to the reality. "Look out, young lady," Melody assumed the man was going to say. His top hat had flown off in the wind, and his body fell, protecting her. The kind man, with a gentle wrinkled face, was struck by an attacking phantom bull. His flesh turned black. His clothing smoldered and caught flame in places. She pulled away from the burning man and patted at the flames and patted at the flames on the hem of her skirts. She jammed her palm into a puddle, and a rock dug into it, but she felt no pain, only frantic worry for her friend. Lost in the chaos, Raiden was nowhere to be found. Melody jumped to her feet and ran toward the staircase, ducking from falling debris. The rain blinded her, and the wind slapped her in the face, but she pressed against the storm. Fire illuminated the horizon's edge, producing an ominous red glow, while white streaks crackled through the atmosphere. The waters of the River of Life turned black and began to boil, with clouds of white bubbles on their raging water surface. Fish surfaced by the thousands, either dead or fighting for life. The bodies, large and small, flipped and flopped along the shoreline. The winds howled louder. The winds howled louder, and with greater force as the storm continued to grow. Celeste grew stronger in power with each passing moment. Birds fell from the sky in swarms, cracking bones and breaking necks. The ground continued to quake and cracks appeared. The water surged into Alexandria from the River of Life. The shaking uprooted and shredded homes. Screams of panic came from the streets. Celeste had begun her transformation to a higher plane of power. With the force of 10 raging bulls, Celeste's spirit returned to her naked body, closing with it the window between planes, stranding the phantom bulls to rain their terror from the sky for as long as the storm's power charged their ghostly form. Still fighting the storm. Climbing the winding stairs, Melody passed a young girl holding a golden handrail. She looked back to the girl with her eyes huge and pupils dilated with fear. "Mommy!" She called for help. Frantically, she reached for her mother. Retrieving the young girl, the mother ran up the stairs. All color drained from her cheeks. "Mommy, why is this happening?" asked the young girl. Melody had wondered the same thing, also wished for her mother. Taking one step after another, the water chased the young mother up the winding staircase. A phantom bull struck another devastating blow, hitting the two with a single bolt of lightning. The girls were gone forever, with no answer of why. Celeste called out in a trance, "May she vomit the fruits of Mother Nature's blood. I offer to thee, the goddess of the moon, the potion filled with thorns and roses and urine from the witch, from this plane of existence. I banish thee." From within her home, the witch Liliana began to vomit rapidly. Chunks of fruits and berries stained the floor. Unable to breathe, she searched for direction, but she could only see the blurred glow from her fireplace. She hadn't attended the ceremony, instead staying home to pay homage to Mother Nature in the ancient ways. Now she tried to pull herself to reach the fire. She knew that she was going to die on that night. She knew it was a curse from the witch Celeste. She knew if her body were burnt, her spirit would be released, and she would forevermore rest in peace. And not 2 feet away from the fire, close enough to feel its growing warmth, she again spewed fruits that she had not eaten. Drowning in her own vomit, she took her final breath. And with that vile curse, she died as she had lived, alone, in her cabin. Extreme screams of terror overpowered the sounds of the storm. Many people drowned. Others were hit by falling debris or struck by lightning while running upstairs attempting to flee the rushing water. Others found themselves unable to open doors. Children drowned while their parents held them close and watched helplessly as they themselves took their last breaths. Many ran for the mountains. They scurried up the treetops and took to the rooftops, dashing to find a refuge. The people were in complete chaos as the phantom bulls continued to strike them down. The storm came with horrendous speed. 14 feet of water flooded Alexandria in a matter of minutes. "Please stop this. Our home is destroyed," pleaded one man, hanging onto a shutter as it floated down the raging flood of the streets. Celeste was entranced. Her voice rose over the increasingly loud winds. She too was drenched with rain and burned with fire, and she called upon the moon's energy to enter her. The currents continued to grow stronger, and the waves crashed into people, flooding their makeshift lifeboats and of window shutters, walls, and ceilings. Winds reversed with no warning, and sounds rumbled from the distance. Streaks of fire lightened the blackened sky as the planet's crust cracked. Atop the dark mountain, bright molten rock shone red through the storm. The magna chamber collapsed, sending fumes of ash straight up from the dark mountain's tops. Stones of rock and pumice littered the sky and fell like rain, splashing in the river that had formed below and forming craters as they hit the mountainside. The dark mountain erupted with a bang, and the piping hot stream of lava spewed forth, racing for the city of Alexandria. It chased an avalanche of ash and took with it everything in its path. As the magma continued to rise, the atmosphere filled with sulfur dioxide. The trees turned to charcoal. Violently, the river of molten lava raced for Alexandria, leaving nothing in its path alive. Toads scurried and rodents ran from the crashing waves of the river against the rocky shores. Gray ash and sand engulfed the overwhelming sky. Homes were swept away, and bodies were incinerated from the deepest stars to the lowest land. Nothing survived. A fire in the sky, Mommy. Look, there's a fire in the sky. Melanie heard the little girl cry from behind the curtains on the third floor of the arena. Melody looked up. The ground shook and the thunder boomed from all around. It was outrageous. Melody covered her ears with her hands, but try as she did, she could not close her eyes to the horror. The rocks crumbled from beneath Melody's feet. The ground gave way before she could run. Her young body splashed into the flooded arena. A boulder landed on her back, forcing her head under the rushing water. Paolo had stood at his library window, surrounded by dark wood and dim light. He held the dove on his long, bony wrist. He looked to the east, watching the storm with fascination. Never did he think to look to the west, to the site of Alexandria. The sight that held his fascination was that of Salith's silhouette, rising to the sky and taking in the moon's rays. He was shocked to see the phantom bulls emerge from her spirit's form, telling no one, all who seemed slightly unaware. Paolo, with a white bird on his hand, calmly took his leave as the wooden pillars and the bookcases began to smoke. Paolo rounded the mountainside, watching the night sky from across the valley divide in a full view of the Coven's fortress, when the mountain he called home erupted. That really needs, does he not feel that it's fucking hot? Is the ground not shaking? We need a little more of Paolo in there. We'll get there. We'll do it. The floors began to crack under the tremendous tremors as the vampires fled the caves. The floors caught fire and the walls burned. The rock and stone fixtures glowed red. Most vampires took to the treetops. Some of them went up the mountainside, and others went down. None of them were harmed due to the great speed and agility. They were able to outrun the lava flow and remain suspended in the night sky until the storm passed. And still, Salith's body rose into the sky, glowing with the full power of the moon's rays. And with that, the goddess of the moon was born. Salith had stolen with the force of nature in one singular crime of greed. The winds died, and the rain stopped, and the bulls dissipated. I woke from my trance to the sounds of destruction and the vibrations from underfoot. I had hoped that my visions were a nightmare, but it was no nightmare. Salith had taken into her the power of the moon, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Quickly, come together, girls. We must cast a spell to protect us from the onset of darkness that will surely lead to our demise. We must act quickly. We need to cast before the sun rises, I demanded of them. Filled with fear, Heidi began to cry. Will this be the end? she asked her sister Hazel Snap. No, Mother Snow knows best. We'll just do as she says. And we'll be put right. All will be put right. Though the eruption was far too off to see with the naked eye, we could feel the ground beneath us roll like a wave. The cabin swayed, as did the trees. The winds were relentless. I worried about Bree, and I called out his name frantically. He failed to respond. I didn't think he could hear us over the wind through the trees. I left my girls to go in search of him. Oh, my hair whipped around me and slapped me in the face, causing my eyes to burn and water. Nearly blinded, I continued to search, calling his name. Bree! Where's my Bree? He must get inside. I cannot lose him. I spotted his orange fur high up on a tree branch. He was howling in fear, stunned, but he wouldn't move. He refused to attempt to climb down to get me, so I climbed up to save my best friend. And the tree branch snapped under my weight as I grabbed for him. Closed my eyes as we crashed into the ground. A single vision filled my mind's eye, one of my sister draining the moon of all her glorious power. I thought back to my first day on the beach, how I had thought my problems were so small, and how I had made no difference to life, how no one creature could alter all of civilization. With that thought, Bree landed on my chest and took with him my last breath. Everything went black in a single moment that I could never take back. I am dead. I fucking love this story. Now, I just have to keep working and getting my writing better, and you too will love this story. Anyway, remember, you are valid, you are worthy, you are loved. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Friday.